My name is Heather. I'm with NAZ Solar Electric. Thank you all for being here and for taking the time to watch this webinar. We are very excited to welcome John Cromer. Sorry. You're like, yeah, it's fine. From Sol-Ark, who is going to be talking about the L3 Limitless HV series and the commercial hybrid inverters. We're very excited about these products, and we know that our installers are excited about them too. So real quick, I just want to introduce my teammates before John takes over. If you are not familiar with NAZ Solar Electric, we are an engineering, distribution, and support company based in Flagstaff, Arizona. We've been helping people plug into solar for over 40 years. We help everyone from the beginner DIYer to experienced installers, and we engineer solutions, distribute equipment, and provide technical support for our clients around the world. We specialize in residential and commercial applications. And I want to say a quick hello to my teammates, James Hall, who is our engineering and sales manager, and Teresa Umholtz, who is our wholesale manager. She works with all of our installer partners in making sure that you are getting your products that you need quickly and as turning those orders around as quickly as possible so you guys can supply your people. So Teresa, do you just want to say a quick hello to your customers here?
Yes, hello. Thank you for joining us today and taking the time. We're super excited about these new Sol-Ark products. They're going to really be a game changer in the commercial and industrial field, the way that their products have been a game changer in the residential field as well. But as far as our program goes, we keep tons of Sol-Ark in stock. We plan to stock these bigger units as well. And as you know, if you've been with us for any length of time, we offer not only great pricing for our installer and dealer network, but also the engineering and installation support that you need, both pre, during, and post installation. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have those kind of needs as well as just the product requirements. And then as far as our shipping times and our turnaround times, we work really hard to get those orders out to you very quickly. So we do everything with a personal touch here. So all my contact information should be on the slides and on the website. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything or have any questions at all about the partner program. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you, Therese. And James, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching this. Yeah, so, if you need any assistance with any of these commercial projects, we've actually been doing quite a lot of system designs for these. Very impressed with, the equipment and the configurability, which John's going to talk quite a lot about. And I have some fun questions at the end here from some of our team. To understand a little bit more detail on how they integrate. So, we can probably share those. And yeah, it's an awesome platform here for the commercial and industrial sector. And I think that we are all very impressed and looking forward to using these. So, John, I'm going to let you take off from here.
All right, sounds good. Let me share my screen here. Okay. So, oh, no, I need to change that around. There we go. All right, so Sol-Ark is, we launched our 30K and 60K inverters at the beginning of this year. We're very focused on the commercial market for next year, and we think that solar installers who have been kind of dabbling in commercial or thinking about commercial, that this is really, next year is really the time to get in. We see, and I think this is in short term slowdown in California, particularly with the decline of net metering. And even in say Arizona, we have net metering kind of scaling back, and it's not so much that the market's going away, it's that the market needs time to adjust to understand how to sell batteries better. And so, battery attachment rates are going up, project rates should be going up, but the fact is, for the next year to 2 years, the commercial solar market segment will be growing faster than the residential market. And there's a lot of historical reasons for that. Mainly, commercial has never been able to benefit from net metering policy. They've always needed batteries to come in and complete the system. And so now that battery options are on the market, what used to be the worst market segment in solar out of residential, commercial, and utility scale is now, still the smallest segment, but seeing faster growth rates. So if you're trying to figure out where the growth opportunity is in your area for next year in the solar industry, the commercial market is it. Sol-ark has had now many years of field experience with its residential hybrid inverter line. And we're bringing that feature set that you find in our residential inverters to the commercial market. So as we'll talk about a little bit later, a lot of the features that come standard in residential solutions kind of get up and run away when it comes down to a commercial product offering, only to be added back on as additional line items or additional costs that might surprise you. So the Sol-ark platform out of the box, it's scalable, it's monitoring, can combine multiple different energy resources together. It includes that grid relay and grid control and interconnection point. Essentially, it's a scaled up version of our hybrid inverter, whose operating system and form factor really have been on the market since 2018. So we have a lot of, probably more than any other manufacturer in the United States, field experience with hybrid inverters. Some differences between our commercial line and our residential line are opening up new applications that you might not have thought about for Sol-ark before. The first would be very large commercial rooftop solar arrays, and it the Sol-ark inverters can handle DC coupling and landing the solar array directly onto the inverter, and that DC coupling is usually a very cost-effective strategy. But there is an advantage to AC coupling that the Sol-ark platform uniquely has within its commercial product line, which I have yet to find on any other commercial inverter system. And so it's good to know about. What it is it's an oversized AC coupling port. And so the Sol-ark inverters could always AC couple to solar. They have this multi-purpose port. We call it the gen port or the generator port. But if you're not using it for a generator, you can use it for other things. And one of those things is AC coupled solar. The gen port on the commercial inverters are the same size as the grid connection. And so you can net meter an incredibly large solar array through the Sol-ark inverter, and basically whatever you can connect a 200 amp commercial connection to, you can flow through that Sol-ark interconnection point, and then incorporate that power source in a backup power mode of operation. Now you can't, that power will be frequency shifted on and off when the batteries get full, so you can't really rely on the power per se. But what it allows you to do is up to, if you have 12 inverters in parallel at 480 volt, 3-phase, you can AC couple a 1.5 megawatt solar array to this system. And so let's say you've already done a megawatt sized commercial rooftop solar array. You want to go back and add batteries to it. That's a very easy project with Sol-ark. And with other inverters, if you had a 1 megawatt solar array, you would have to AC couple a 1 megawatt battery inverter system. With Sol-ark, you could get away with around a 650 kW or 600 kW solar array, battery backup system. So the battery backup system can be undersized relative to AC coupled solar, and that just might create the the budget flexibility you need to incorporate some battery retrofitting. For ground mount, we do have a containerized solution coming out later in the year. It's not as developed yet as our L3 series, but we will talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Last but not least, we want our contractors to start thinking about EV carports with Sol-ark hybrid inverters. And the reason is the Sol-ark hybrid inverter offers some special value to EV carports specifically, and it all goes back to that GEN port that you could AC couple solar to. If you imagine you have a solar covered parking lot and the inverters are out in the parking lot, there's really no reason to do AC coupling. You can just DC couple directly to the inverter, and now you have that GEN port left over. And you're like, well, what do I use this for? Our residential off-grid customers would use it to tie a generator into, and you can tie generators, commercial generators into the three-phase solar converters. But if you're not doing that, another thing you could tie into, if you're not AC coupling and you're not connecting a generator, is a EV charger. And a lot of times with commercial electric vehicle fleets, the existing building transformer or load bank does not have the capability of powering the building plus, a 500 kilowatt EV charger. And so what you can do with the Sol-ark hybrid inverters, you can plug the solar array into it through DC coupling, and you can plug the EV chargers into that GEN port. And then you only, from the parking lot back to the building, you only have to deal with the utility conductors going out to that transformer. So you have the least number of utility conductor runs, and then you have all the infrastructure you need for high amperage EV charging solar carports, all being managed through that Sol-ark hybrid inverter. So those are some very competitive applications of our product. The Sol-ark inverters, they do a seamless transfer with some larger kind of containerized storage solutions. You get to as a transfer time as much as 1 minute. But because we use these more modular string inverters, we can do a much faster transfer time. So it's seamless transfer for commercial application. Scalable architecture. This system works for 1 inverter and 1 battery cabinet. It also works for 12 inverters and indoors up to 16 battery cabinets per inverter. So you can do 11.5 megawatt hour battery banks with this architecture, as well as 60 kilowatt hour battery banks. So incredibly scalable. Throw in that generator port, that multi-purpose port, and you can effectively roll out Sol-ark onto every job site, even though every job site is a little bit different. Every job site has a little bit unique interconnection strategy. The Sol-ark platform is so versatile that it can cover a lot more bases than our competitors. Let's say you had a 1200 amp panel board and you wanted to do a full 1200 amp grid pass-through. Well, each inverter has 200 amps of grid pass-through. You just do 6 inverters through a supply-side connection, and you could pass through 1200 amp panel board and back it up with 300 amps of service. Or you could add 6 more inverters and get another 300 amps of backup. So as that grid pass-through capability, GEN port, DC coupling capability, the grid connection that automatically isolates from the grid, and the controller that comes included with the Sol-ark, it has a time of day controller and a seasonal demand controller. And my favorite thing about the controller for this year is that when Net Metering 3.0 came out in California, we didn't have to change a thing about the controller for it to be net metering 3.0 ready. You don't even have to connect the internet to the inverter. You can program net metering 3.0 by just touching the LCD screen and going into the grid settings and saying sell back between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. in August and September, for California net metering 3.0. So very easy to do California applications with this system. For those of you who are familiar with our residential product line, the features of this inverter are not all that different. The differences are that there's one more solar MPPT and 2 more solar ports, so it can take 8 solar circuits on 4 MPPT, which is a little bit larger in size. The battery port, there's 2 battery ports, and so say you have 2 battery cabinets, it's very easy just to wire them without any DC combining. The combining is done at the inverter. The battery cabinets, by the way, come with parallel capability, but it's just simple installs, 2 battery ports. It has the grid connection. It has a grid input and a load output, and it has that additional generator port. We have different inverters for 208 3-phase and 480 volt. The 208 3-phase version, our SL14, when it comes out early next year, that will support 208 3-phase application so that you can accomplish load control with 208 3-phase. That allows you to do that 1200 amp pass through and then throttle most of the building down so that the building can operate in a backup mode of operation when the power goes out. That's more within the ampacity of what the inverter system can provide. So that's real interesting because whole building backup really hasn't been a thing yet. Likewise, a lot of 1200 amp panel boards have 200 amp load centers on them. You could just back up a single load bank, a single 200 amp breaker on that panel board with one of these systems. So there's different values for AC coupling, DC coupling, and you can do battery only or solar only applications too. Sometimes we just get Solar Edge installers who they can't get their Solar Edge inverter, but they have a deadline to meet, and so they just need a 208 volt 3-phase inverter. So they come over to Sol-Ark and say, well, maybe we'll add the batteries later, but we need to get our 208 volt 3-phase system commissioned, and we'll use your inverter in a solar only mode of operation for the time being. So we have our 30K inverter for 208 volt 3-phase. We have our 60K inverter for 480 volt 3-phase. The standard warranty is 10 years. We do offer an additional 5-year extended warranty on these units. The load controller, the date for its launch is first quarter of next year. We're still in our alpha testing of it. I'm on the beta test, so if you watch any of my webinars, you'll know we're about to come out with it when I'm talking about having it in my apartment. But we continue to work on it, and when it comes out, it's going to be a very I think it'll be a best of class product, but since it's not on the market yet, let's just stick to the L3 series for this webinar. So with our batteries, we have indoor and outdoor battery cabinet options. Oh, got me to the end of the program here. Oh, none of y'all have epilepsy. We got some indoor and outdoor battery options. One nice thing about these batteries is they're made for Sol-Ark inverters. So there's very little to do in terms of wiring and commissioning. The indoor batteries you assemble yourself, but the assembly is very straightforward. The outdoor batteries come pre-assembled in terms of the battery modules and racking. The battery modules have built-in fire suppression. So your NFPA 855 allows for the jurisdiction to utilize alternative means of fire suppression, including aerosol-based fire suppression built into the battery module. So your fire suppression is included: lithium iron phosphate chemistry, prismatic cells. The batteries have a 10-year warranty on them. These are non-containerized solutions. So non-containerized solutions sometimes fit into the building landscape architecture a little bit better than containerized. Sometimes it's a little tacky to just put down a shipping container in a parking lot and call it a project, as simple as that might be. So these battery systems can go inside with better environmental protection. They can go outdoor in our outdoor air conditioned cabinet. And so they could be very small. Containerized solution, there's a rather large buy-in cost to get to. You have to buy a megawatt hour worth of storage. So this is a good 30 kilowatt or 40 kilowatt hour, 60 kilowatt hour as your minimum starting point. And it's very scalable, up to 1.5 megawatt AC coupled, 720 kW backup on 480. When you compare our commercial inverters to other 208 three-phase battery inverters on the market, our inverters might be a little bit more expensive than our competition. Generally, when you get better inverter pricing than our competition, they're using server rack inverters, which are being repurposed from UPS server rooms, which have steady electric loads and very controlled environments. And that's not really, an inverter that has been field tested for building backup, whereas we have a lot of experience in that. On top of that, when you look at server rack inverters, they don't have the grid controls, so they need the infrastructure, they need the software. They might not have the DC coupled capability or the parallel stacking capability. So all those things come back into the project as extra cost. So when you add it all up, we're confident that we deliver a lower project cost than our competition in this space.
Hey, John, can I add something to that? From
Sure.
a design perspective, like having an integrated MID and the ability, like built-in disconnects and everything within the inverter makes the integration a whole lot easier, much more seamless. Adding an external microgrid controller, external AC contacts, having to deal with external transformers and stuff like that, potentially isolation transformers, all this kind of stuff gets really difficult and it's quite convoluted in certain cases. And look, the Sol-ark CNI products are really simple to just integrate into, 480 volt or 208 three-phase, commercial project. Because of that built-in MID, it's totally worth the value, because when you start adding up all these other components, it's just bonkers trying to even just get someone to configure this stuff and get it set up can be astronomical in cost. So the Sol-ark equipment and the support that you get from Sol-ark and from us and from our team and the capabilities of this product, because it's very similar to the residential line as far as configurability and stuff, it's like simple. It really is. Like,
yeah, it's you bring up a great point. I mean, even at the residential level, when you use our competitors' products, you have an external grid gateway that you then wire the inverter into, and you have to wire the communication circuit between the gateway and the inverter to get all that seamless disconnecting to all happen. And when the products are not part of the same box, when you have to rely on that communication wire between the two units, especially if you get rid of the communication wire and you start doing, Wi-Fi signaling or LoRa signaling or power line communication or, whatever, you do with that, it slows down the transfer time. It makes the transfer less reliable. And, you scale that up to the commercial level, it becomes mind-bogglingly complicated. Sometimes the residential installers, they get surprised by that because these, all these features, you're used to having time of day settings or demand management settings included, in the feature set of the inverters. But now in most cases, you're utilizing inverters that, really were not developed for all of these like solar oriented features, and they just come back to haunt you with all sorts of kinds of commissioning difficulties. So it's very easy to get these projects out of the ground, installed and functional.
There's a lot less gotchas with the Sol-ark equipment, basically.
Yeah. So we have not made batteries before. We like battery choice. Battery choice is complicated. People also want a, one hand to shake when it comes to what equipment they use. But, the nice thing about battery choice is batteries are the most expensive system component. And so being able to bid out the batteries once in a while helps keep costs down. Feature sets for batteries, like the included fire suppression, or warranty terms, or heating systems, or cooling systems, all those features change. And being battery agnostic means, not only do you get a good price with your system, you also get the right feature set for the job. But we felt that with commercial, there's so much more on the line in terms of reliability, because it's not that you're just trying to back up the building. The revenue of that building is on the line if there is something that goes wrong with the system. And when you go into high voltage, there's a lot more series wiring, and so there's a lot less redundancy built into the system. And so you can have, one issue take out the system, and it's a higher stakes game. And so because of that need for superior reliability, that's the driving factor that's driving us into battery module manufacturing. Now, one great thing about the battery modules is that, Sol-ark, we use contract manufacturing. Our relationship with our contract manufacturer goes back over a decade. It's worked out very well for us. It's worked out very well for them. We use DIA for our inverters as well as our battery modules. So it's one single source, which means you're not going to get screwed up by BMS inverter incompatibility or, firmware updates that get ahead of each other from a battery to inverter manufacturer relationship. This is all managed by that, Sol-ark and DIA relationship. And many of the others in this space, they'll say, oh, we're a solutions provider, or we're an integrator, where they might just make the inverter, or they might just make the battery, or they might actually not make any of it and piece it all together from different suppliers and different OEMs behind the scenes to give you, one throat to choke. But how good is that when behind the curtain, there's actually still, 3 different people between the battery, the controls, and the inverter. So all of this is done in a much more streamlined and integrated manner with Sol-ark. The batteries are made specifically for our inverter. The inverter is using an operating system that we've basically had in the field since 2018. So very reliable. The thing to know about our indoor batteries is the indoor battery cabinet is a different size than the outdoor battery cabinet. And so the 208 volt 3-phase indoor battery cabinet is 40 kilowatt hours. The 480 volt indoor battery cabinet is 60 kilowatt hours. And both of our battery cabinets outdoors are 60 kilowatt hours. So it's really only the 208 3-phase indoor battery cabinet that's the odd man out. And that's a little bit shorter. It's a 40 kilowatt hour cabinet. And that has a little bit to do with our product go-to-market launch strategy. The outdoor module for the 208 volt 3-phase is a little bit different than the indoor module. And the indoor module is what's showing up this month at Sol-Ark headquarters to go into distribution. So this is what we're going to market with, is a 40 kilowatt hour indoor cabinet for 208 volt and a 60 kilowatt hour indoor cabinet for the 480 volt. And then what's coming out at the end of December is the outdoor cabinet version. The outdoor cabinet uses the same battery modules. It just has a more robust case with an air conditioner unit built into it that air conditions the batteries. We make the air conditioner too. We make everything, that's in our product line. The gotcha of the outdoor system is that we constrain the system size to 6 inverters and 6 battery cabinets per inverter. So you can build a much larger system indoors than you can outdoors. And the reason for that is that we have a containerized outdoor solution coming to market in the second half of 2024. And by the time you get more than 6 inverters and 6 battery cabinets per inverter, you might as well go into the containerized solution. And so, yeah, inside in a more controlled environment, in an authorized personnel only room, you might have a little bit more bussing to do to get into those larger system sizes. Outside, doing 6 inverters in parallel and 6 battery cabinets per inverter is very, very easy to wire. So it's a very easy system to design and install and implement. And if you got any larger than that, that's when you would go into our shipping container solution. So the outdoor cabinet, it's very space efficient. Our inverters are outdoor rated, so we don't need to put them inside the cabinet where you would have an air conditioned cabinet and then the inverter generating a ton of heat. So instead, we just air condition the batteries. That means it's a very efficient cooling system. The inverter hangs off the side of the cabinet. The cabinets can be bolted to the foundation. They can be, grabbed with a forklift on either side and kind of set in place. The 30K operates at a little bit lower voltage range than the 60K. That's on the battery bank side. That's on the solar input side. That's on the AC voltage side. So it's an air-cooled heat pump that goes inside this outdoor cabinet. So outdoors, you can have up to 6 inverters in parallel and up to 6 battery cabinets per inverter. So that lets you do battery banks that are about 2.2 megawatt hours in size, and solar array AC coupling. AC coupling that's from 300 to 750 kW. Inside, we can do up to 12 inverters in parallel and up to 16 battery cabinets per inverter for 192 battery cabinets total. Surprise me to do one of those projects. That'd be great.
When did you guys get to that point? So that's new.
Yeah. I mean, we initially were marketing 12 and then have come back and confirmed up to 16. So a little bit larger.
at that scale, you end up having trouble charging batteries consistently, though.
Probably. Yeah, I
But
mean,
let's talk about battery connections to the inverters really quick, right? So like on the 60K and 30K, you have a 50 amp input on each battery and input, right? How would you go about busing, let's just say like 3 batteries together on one input to the inverter?
Yeah. So the battery cabinets come with internally 150 amp bus bar. So
Okay.
it's very easy to parallel 3 battery cabinets to each other. And then the inverter has 2 battery ports. So it's very easy to parallel, 6 outdoor battery cabinets to one inverter because of what the hardware that's included in the outdoor cabinet. Now, the indoor cabinet, it's a cheaper cabinet, it's a cheaper system. It's a more, I don't know, it's designed to be in an authorized personnel, battery room. And at that point, you would likely just put a power distribution block in a junction box, kind of central to each battery stack or group of battery stacks, and then wire, the batteries into a power distribution block to aggregate it before landing on the inverter. So
Right.
with 16 battery cabinets per inverter, you would have 2 power distribution blocks, 8 inverters per power distribution block, then going into the inverter. I would look at, say, Marathon Specialty Products make some high voltage power distribution blocks that are appropriate for the job.
It's
And then
important to note that like your 60 kilowatt inverter is only charging on one of the inputs 30 kilowatt output. So you put 8 batteries on one input, you're going to have a hard time keeping up with that amount of capacity.
Yeah, I mean that I can only imagine a battery bank of that size being worthwhile in like a Caribbean microgrid thing. I mean, sometimes you see municipal RFPs for 7 days worth of lithium storage where they don't really know what they're asking for. I never know if those projects, make or if they just kind of die from being ill-conceived. What I would say is, we know that you can have successful communication with 16 battery cabinets per inverter and will allow up to 12 inverters. Now, that's approaching the very maximum that I can imagine you would do before you would say, well, let's just put a row of shipping container mega arcs alongside the building. So, whether we get to maxing out the system that way, I don't know. What I do know is that it's a hell of a lot better than trying to do battery banks of this size at the 48 volt range, which we've all been puzzling
It's also good
over
to know
for
that the
years.
upper limits are like way beyond what is even practical. That's the point here, I think, is that like at some point it's not even practical. You should really get some help designing a system like this so that you can make sure and satisfy the actual load requirements, energy storage requirements, and regeneration into the system in an effective way. But it's good to know that the peak battery to inverter relationship here is very unlimited to some degree.
And there might be some job sites out there that are in rural areas where they can take the REAP grant and they can take the tax credit and maybe get some FEMA disaster response facility money and basically get a 11 megawatt hour lithium battery bank for free. And that would be the site that I could see moving forward with an indoor battery bank of this size. And that's basically a dedicated building for the batteries. It's like rather than put them in a battery room or a shipping container, let's just go ahead and put them all in one warehouse. But it would be a very special project to get up to that size. What we think is going to be far more common is just one battery cabinet and one inverter. And like if I'm trying to do demand management, that's really what I'm selling is, hey, I have a customer who doesn't really want backup. He's looking to reduce his electric bill. That's one battery cabinet, one inverter as a minimum project size. And the reason is, a demand management, it's like mountaintop removal for your electric bill. It's really, really easy to remove the very top of the mountain, but the further down the mountain you want to remove, the harder and harder it gets. So for demand management in particular, just starting small and planting your flag on the site, maybe you don't know what the right size is for demand management. Well, just selling them one inverter and one battery cabinet is going to be a cost-effective project because of the nature of how demand management works. And then you can collect site information and go back and plan a more appropriately sized, larger project the next year. If they used you for phase one and it was successful, they'll use you for phase two as well. For backup applications, personally, I would start with 2 inverters and 2 battery cabinets as a minimum project size, just for some redundancy. If it's a 200 amp service or a 400 amp service, that's great. You can have the full grid pass through. And if one inverter's on the blink, you have the other inverter there providing some power and capability into the building. If it's for backup power and you want to take care of that pass-through capability, I mean, one inverter will work, but given that these are commercial projects and the inverters only cost, 15 grand, I think it's a good idea to start for backup purposes for whole building backup, not backing up like one 200 amp load center off of the building. But if you're trying to do, whole building backup, adding in a little redundancy and starting with 2 inverters and 2 battery cabinets, minimum project size, I think that's a good idea. Often you can double lug off of a 200 amp 3-phase disconnect. So you don't even have to buy extra panel boards to get into 2 inverter, 2 battery cabinet systems. So our data sheets are on our website. You go to solark.com, products, commercial, you'll see the L3 Limitless lithium battery series. And so you'll see our data sheets there that kind of capture that detail. 10-year warranties on these batteries. Some specs are changing. We've gone and confirmed that the altitude rating actually goes up to 3,000 meters rather than 2,000. So some small items like that. We always kind of have a debate on whether to put Fahrenheit or Celsius on the data sheet, and sometimes you make one decision, comes back, and you have to go make the other decision. But more or less, other than seeing us go from 12 battery cabinets to 16 for indoors, and seeing that altitude change up to 3,000 meters, I think everything else here should stay the same. Much information on the Mega Arc, like we're not putting it on our website just yet. The big difference between the Mega Arc and our L3 series with our hybrid inverters is the Mega Arc, and this is the term PCS is used in different ways by electric code versus inverter architecture, but not the power control system for being able to oversize the bus bar for your interconnection rules PCS. But for inverter architecture, PCS is like an inverter that has to have fairly balanced loads, and larger inverters, 125 kilowatt inverters, 500 kilowatt inverters, those are PCS inverters. They have to have relatively balanced loads. They deliver relatively balanced power. And that's what the containerized solutions are. When you get into our non-containerized solutions with our hybrid inverters, those can handle a good deal of phase imbalance because they're individual inverter cores rather than one inverter core being divided up into 3 legs of power. So, at any rate, the Mega Arc is for larger applications, whether it's providing grid services to electric cooperatives or backing up very large building loads where, the Mega Arc might back up the entire building. You still might have a small L3 series on site to back up the loads that need the seamless transfer. So you might have like your computer system and your refrigerators on their own L3 series inverter and battery system, and then a Mega Arc outside, providing additional backup power facilities wide, for your ultimate, power management and preparation system. But the key thing is containerized solutions, they generally take a little bit longer time to develop. And so we're letting you know now, even though they're not going to be delivered until halfway through next year.
I do have some questions. So virtual power plant, where are you guys at with these types of commercial systems and VPP?
Yeah. So we have a little bit of work to do with our commercial inverters. Our residential inverters are already integrated into Energy Hub as a DERMS platform. That runs our connected solutions incentives up on the East Coast. And then other than that, with the net metering 3.0 as it stands, there isn't a need for that DERMS integration, although there will be in the future. Where the inverters have the capability to accept DERMS controls, it's just a matter of confirming that with like the California Energy Commission and things like that. So we're still getting on to the California list for being a DERMS compatible inverter, although we are JA12 and all that and will be. So yeah, I don't know of, say, Texas is another big VPP area, and I don't know of any out of the ground VPP applications that we have in Texas at this time.
As far as the inverter's concerned, or communications concerned, where is Sol-Ark at with the My Sol-Ark, right? So you guys are transitioning to a little bit different platform, right?
Yeah. So we're moving away from PowerView and into My Sol-Ark, mainly for more internal control over the code and software. For example, with PowerView, it was a very good residential solution, especially for kind of the techie side of the industry who wants to see a lot of data for troubleshooting. But then say California came out and said, well, we have seasonal load controller requirements, and we didn't have the ability to build that feature set into say PowerView. And so the firmware on our inverters capability starts to outstrip what our approach to delivering the monitoring system could really deliver. And so we're migrating to a new monitoring platform that we have more control over called My Sol-Ark. That migration is still in progress. We have L3 systems using it. I think that really, Sol-Ark right now, we've basically, from when I started with Sol-Ark in early April to where we are now, I think we've grown by about 35% in terms of our staffing and our office. We outgrew our 100-person office, and now we moved into a 500-person office. So we're not at 500 people yet, but we're growing in that direction. So our software team is kind of at the tail end of getting a little bit better structured to complete some of the projects they've been working on for the past year and a half. So, the My Sol-Ark platform is still ongoing, but it should be fully migrated soon. It's kind of like trying to get it done by Christmas type of thing, but software it's never finished. It always improves with time.
Are
So
there any
we're
fun
getting
new
there.
features we can expect from that, or is it pretty much a model of PowerView?
We're starting with basically a clone of the PowerView features, and then growing from there, it will focus more on consumer friendliness. Because like when Sol-Ark started with its programming and monitoring system and LCD touch display, like our competition was like, some of the 48 volt hybrid invert or 48 volt battery inverters that came before that had incredibly technical programming interfaces. And so by comparison, Sol-Ark's was very simple. Well, now when we're trying to compete with, say, Tesla, that's a whole new level of consumer friendliness that PowerView is really, the installer's monitoring system, whereas, we know we need to get a little bit more consumer friendly. Engineers, and I'm an engineer by nature, we're always going to be a little dismissive of consumer friendliness. I see features that are commonly requested, like storm mode. Being like, oh, when are y'all gonna have storm mode? Storm mode will be a feature of my Sol-Ark, for example. And yeah, storm mode is a very popular selling point, but what I see more often than not is a thunderstorm occurring in an area, and all of a sudden a system starts charging the battery during time of use peak times.
Yeah, I
and
would
it
be
ends up
really annoyed
costing
as
you
an
money.
engineer, really annoyed if that happened for me, right? Like that just cost me $130 to charge 10 kilowatts because I got a storm rolling in. Like,
Yeah. So I
you
I
know,
think there's a lot of value in just being able to say, well, look at the Sol-Ark time of use metering control, see how it's set to let the battery charge up to 100% by 6 p.m. and then sell everything back to the grid between 6 and 8. And that's what you would program it with California Net Metering 3.0. Being able to show the customer how the control scheme works. While that is more technical than not needing the customer to know anything about how their system works, right now that's where Sol-Ark is at. And while I don't think we will hide that capability in the future, making it a little bit more accessible for homeowners who don't want to really know anything about how their system works is going to be kind of the focus of my Sol-Ark, with some fleet management benefits improvements too.
well, John, I want to thank you for putting this all together and helping us out while we wait for some of these questions.
Yeah, I mean, with commercial, I think one of the more common responses I give to people when they come back and they're like, well, I don't know what size of battery that I need for a project. Then it's like, well, if you don't know, and that means you can't know, because it's like, well, if you can know and you don't know, then you have some work to do. You have to go get the load profile data and do some design work and some assessment work, to get a better idea of what size of system you want to deliver. But if you truly don't know what size of system you want to deliver, so we see this a lot where it's like, hey, I have a national contract and I want to roll out commercial inverters and batteries to every chain in this franchise. Every location needs to get a system. How do I know what to deliver to them? I would say, well, start with your minimum project size, and because every hotel has, every school, every grocery store, they have a refrigeration unit, and they have some lighting systems that obviously, even if the business is not going to be open during the power outage, obviously there's a benefit for backing up those things, and there's a case for demand management. So just, one battery cabinet, one inverter, back up those essential loads, get your demand management going, just focus on the minimum battery size for that. And then, you can always go back and have the data. So now you have your inverter on site, you have your battery on site, You get access to that building's energy use, and you can say, okay, well, we could have put 4 inverters and 4 battery cabinets on this building, but we only put 1. These systems are far easier to expand than residential 48 volt. You don't wire all the battery cabinets together and all the inverters together. You just go directly from the battery cabinet to each individual inverter. So if you have 4 battery cabinets and 4 inverters, there's no DC busing in between. You just land the batteries directly onto each inverter. So it's very easy.
And then they're just sharing power based on communications, and perception.
Yeah. So it's with a commercial battery project, it's very easy just to put down 1 inverter, 1 battery cabinet, and leave the space for 3 or 4 and go back later. So especially with chains and multiple locations, don't be afraid of just quoting, 1 or 2 battery cabinets, 1 or 2 inverters for every location, and then, planning a phase 2 expansion the next year.
Yeah, it's very dynamic because inputs are individual on each of the inverters. So if you did put 1 battery on 1 inverter and then you decided, oh, I need a little bit more capacity, but the inverter is suitably sized, then you can just simply pull off that separate input and put another battery on the individual input. Now you got 2 separate batteries on your inverter, right? 2 separate DC inputs. But it's safe to say you shouldn't be paralleling old batteries and new batteries because of the high AC or DC voltage on their own internal buses.
Well, what I would
you expand.
What I would do in that case is let's say you had 1 inverter with 2 battery cabinets, or you had 2 inverters with 2 battery cabinets, and then you wanted to expand with an additional inverter. You could, with that additional inverter, just put in a new battery cabinet on that new inverter. It's
exactly.
And alternately, if you wanted to expand the battery size but not the inverter size, you could take the 2 used battery stacks and move them over onto 1 inverter and put in 2 new battery cabinets on the second inverter.
You just scale batteries with inverters.
Yeah.
Basically, so it's an AC scaled solution.
Yeah.
Let the inverters deal with the variance and resistance and such.
Yeah. So there's pros and cons to having a shared DC bus amongst all the batteries in the system, but at the end of the day, it does create a bit of a safety hazard to just put in as many lithium batteries as you can onto a DC bus and energize it. And this breaks up that safety hazard.
From the scale of these projects, it definitely makes more sense to do this in this way.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't think we have any additional questions. I appreciate everything that you've presented here, John. Heather, do you have any closeout?
No, I just wanted to say thanks so much to everyone for coming. And thank you so much, John, for giving us all of that really great information. And of course, to my wonderful team for being here. And if you guys need anything from us, especially our installer partners, reach out to Therese and she will get you all set up. And if you need any additional help, James is always there as well.
Right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye, John. We'll catch up later.